Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and Star Wars The Acolyte episodes 1 and 2 are in the books, and I guess really it's history in the making because it's truly the first time ever we have gotten Star Wars live action content that doesn't take place in the Skywalker, not necessarily saga, but timeline. You know, you're removing yourself considerably from what you're familiar with and digesting a lot of new characters, places, things, and even themes. Just shout out off the top to our sponsors that allow us to come on here and do this content and support the channel on just a tremendous level. Jesse from Storytime Spectacular, Jason Knight, Backtrack Cinema, Ryan from Colleague Nation, Matt Whitfield, and Chris, who, if you're interested in getting a Michael Myers mask made, check out ChrisC_78 on Instagram. He doesn't do Star Wars stuff, although he is a Star Wars fan. He should really get into some like Vader masks and stuff. That'd be fun. Without further ado, joining us for the first time in a long time, actually I'll get to him in a second. Randy, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot. Definitely was one of those days where I was like, come on, can the workday get done fast? Because I got to get home. I got to see this. I was that excited where it just kind of just slowed down my day. But, you know, among other things, it's good to see you back in the chair, man.
Yeah, you know, I'm a little more air to spare, if you will, which is nice, and the chest isn't pounding, so that's always a pleasure too. Joining us for the first time in quite some time, as you see, he has a bunch of goodies in the background and his co-panelist Salacious Crumb, it looks like. It's Kieran. What's going on, man?
Not too much. Very excited to come on here and talk Star Wars. I got some free time right now, so hopefully I'll be around for a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, I think we're slated to have you for select episodes of House of the Dragon and The Acolyte moving forward, so it's exciting. I don't know if Salacious Crumb will be joining us for House of the Dragon, but we'll see. And also joining us, he's Zach the Voice. He's also the co-host of the IPC podcast, and I think he's figured out some tech issues he had before we got going. Zach, what's going on, man?
I feel like the Verizon guy. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, and great sound.
Okay. Thank God, because I moved about 2 weeks ago, and the reason I've got this lovely background that has nothing to do with Star Wars is because it's the first picture on my computer I could find that would prevent you from seeing all the garbage that is behind me. That is my personal effects, and I don't mean garbage literally. Like, if I actually say that in front of my wife, she'll tell me to throw it out. So I do have a place for these things. They're just not in their place yet. So I am throwing together a hodgepodge of this camera that's from this project over here, and this microphone from this desk over here, and this computer that's from, you know, this thing over here, and I'm over here. So I'm glad to be here.
My kid would approve of your background big time. Of course, I end up with the dinosaur nut kid. So
hey, Chaos Theory. I know we're not talking about it tonight, but it is worth the watch.
I think they made, really briefly, I think they made it a little too adult for him compared to, I can't remember what the first Camp Cretaceous, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
But since you grow with the kids, I liked it a lot, actually. But anyways, we're Acolyte episodes 1 and 2 tonight. I took care of the sponsors. Also, big thanks to our patrons. If you want to support the channel on another level, it's down there, patreon.com. I think it says .Fandom Empire. It's actually /Fandom Empire. And then our Legacy of Star Wars group on Facebook is still in its infancy, but check us out over there. We'll be more active moving forward. Zach, we got some show notes. Are you fine with at least beginning on taking us through them, and I'll handle all the sponsor mumbo jumbo when it comes up, or would you rather me do it?
I think I should be all right. If we need to tag team, I can let you know. But Yeah, I'm just trying to gather all of my thoughts because no sooner did the second episode go to credits than I started scrambling through whatever's behind me to try to get all my equipment put together. So I'm just a little short of breath. Hope y'all can keep up with me. All right. Um, Basically, we're going to try to do as much of a chronological discussion as best as possible. So we'll go through it nearly act by act, maybe not scene by scene, minute by minute, but these first two episodes of The Acolyte, we're going to try to dive into an era of Star Wars that hasn't really been seen on any screen, really. It's been seen on paper, it's been heard on audiobooks talking about the High Republic, but we really have not gotten a lot of visual representation until tonight. And so it's almost like a grand unveiling in certain respects. But then there were certain components that also felt very familiar. So let's just go ahead and dive into episode 1, which is titled Lost/Found. We'll go around the horn and just talk about initial spoiler-free impressions, and then we'll see where the conversation takes us from there. Randy, we'll kick it off with you. Initial thoughts on episode 1 of The Acolyte.
Initial thoughts. I thought it was well paced. The time just flew by, so I was really enjoying myself. I thought overall, it was pretty well done. A couple of things kind of coming out early kind of surprised me. I figured they would have kind of at least given us a couple episodes, but that's fine. But other than that, I just had a lot of fun with it, and I was just blown away by just, like I said, how quickly it was over with, and it just didn't even feel like I was sitting there for almost an hour. It was great.
Kieran, how about you? Initial thoughts on episode 1.
I honestly thought the pace was a little fast for me. Like it was a little bit jumpy, Harry Potter style, sort of like really quickness. But I did really like that it was like a shroud of mystery the whole time. There was questions floating through my head through the entire episode. Like, oh wait, isn't that? Wait, are we gonna find out about? Like there was a lot of like very much keeping me on the phone. You know what I mean? So. I very much I liked the episode quite a bit, but the pace was not my favorite thing.
That's fair. That's very fair. So we've got one that's in favor of the pacing, one not in favor of the pacing. Sean, you're the tiebreaker. Thoughts on the pacing and the episode as a whole?
Well, I'll do my best to not mention this again on this episode. But my one issue with this is the pacing, because it's just there's not enough time. And until Disney, it's not just a Star Wars thing. Until Disney starts doing what HBO does with their big tentpole shows, this is always going to be a problem at times. Sometimes it's not. Like Ahsoka's fine with its length a lot of the time, but when we're meeting so many new characters, you want to spend more time with them. Other than that, I can't think of a whole lot to complain about, if I'm being honest. So I was intrigued, and I think Kieran summed it up best with one. It actually kind of felt like Harry Potter a little bit to me. And two, you want to see what happens next. There's just enough mystery there to go, okay, we know who, but we don't know why. And I really, really need to know why.
Well, there's definitely a lot that's still yet to be explained, but I think it was wise of them to kick it off with a 2-episode premiere. I will say if they had just stopped after episode 1, I think the audience retention next week might have been a lot lower if they hadn't done 1 and 2 back to back. That was one thing that I noticed. And in going off of what you were talking about with pacing, Sean, if they felt like they had to release 1 and 2 back to back in order to grip the audience, perhaps that's an indicator that those 2 episodes should have been 1 to begin with. Any disagreements on that particular thought? Because if they need all hour-long worth of content, then maybe that whole hour 10 should have just been the first episode.
I thought Kenobi did this as well, and not so much Book of Boba Fett or The Mandalorian. Ahsoka have suffered from this a little bit. It almost feels like they make a 4-hour movie 4.5 hour movie, slice it into 8 parts, and it's not really supposed to be an episode. It feels like at times, kind of like you were saying, like with these two first episodes, it kind of feels like it's one episode cut in half, kind of. So, it's not my preference, but at the end of the day, I did enjoy the content a lot.
I totally agree with Zach in pretty much everything he said. If the right after the first episode, like I didn't have any time to reflect because I clicked next almost immediately, but I don't know if I enjoyed the second episode more than the first, but with where the first one cut off, I would have been like, that's kind of, we'll see where it goes. And after watching the second one, I was definitely like, oh man, can't wait to see it next week. If it was just all one episode, which is the way that I'm sure a lot of people viewed it, I don't know who's gonna, maybe hit it tomorrow and only have enough time for one episode, but I think those people won't get as good an experience as watching both of them right away together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I don't know if it was done on purpose that way or to try to just make sure they watched both episodes. But again, if that is the whole point, is to get both episodes in, then yeah, make it one long episode without the credits and the break in the middle. It was again, yeah. If I had watched it just the first episode, I would have been, I'd been like Kieran. I'd have been like, okay. I mean, I didn't hate the episode, but also I felt like it didn't give me a satisfying ending to an episode to make me really feel the need to just keep going. But with having the 2 episodes back to back, I would literally, just like Kieran, I just literally hit next episode, let's go, because I knew it was there and I was excited for it. So I agree. It should have been probably one episode that's over an hour.
Well, even though it wasn't, the story was told in such a way that where one dropped off, 2 was able to pick up and keep going. And I do like that it's one of those immediate turnaround type of storytelling, because there are other Star Wars stories that we've seen that maybe have a little bit of a time jump, or we think or imagine that perhaps there was a time jump, and it doesn't get confirmed one way or the other until something happens and they actually say, it's been 2 weeks, or some shit like that. And we don't have to question it. We don't have to worry about it, at least with these first 2 episodes. And the first one, I think, was kind of a stage setter, kind of a tone setter. And what I found really interesting, but also maybe a little disappointing, and this could be just because I'm a Carrie-Anne Moss fan, I wasn't expecting her to die in the first 10 minutes. If we're going to go into spoilers, like, that was just a big surprise for me. I was not expecting such a pivotal name that was thrown on all of these different promotional graphics, and she had like a character bio that was put on the Star Wars official page, and then within the first scene, she's gone. And that particular scene in that cantina was the teaser that people who went to go see the Phantom Menace in theaters ended up seeing. So literally all that people who went to see the Phantom Menace re-release got was the first 5 minutes of the show, literally. And then from there on out, everything's a surprise. So I appreciated that they revealed like the bare minimum, because even the teaser didn't reveal the death. But I guess the thing that stunned me the most about that first episode was she was the Jedi that got killed off. Like, I don't know. This maybe I'm biased because I like Carrie-Anne Moss, but I wasn't expecting to see her gone so soon, and I was a little, I wouldn't say put off by it, but I was disappointed.
I think we're gonna get a lot more of the character going forward. Still, is based on what's in trailers and stuff, because it does show her in different attire. Whatever this big thing is, the big mystery in terms of why it's all happening. I think we're gonna find out, not just by hearing about it, but we're actually going to go back and see it, because there's definitely footage of all of the Jedi characters that we're meeting together in the trailers as a group. So we will get more of her, but I was surprised. I didn't know that was happening. It felt very Drew Barrymore from Scream 1. You know, Drew Barrymore's the star. She's dead.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job with promoting it, because you get an actress like Carrie-Anne Moss who's very recognizable in geek culture in general, and they pretty much put her front and center of everything. So, and I think that was done purposefully so that when she does get off in the first 10 minutes, it has a little more impact, because you were like expecting to see all this amazing Matrix-esque stuff that we did get to see a little bit of it, not a ton of it, but it's just everybody had that high expectation, and then all of a sudden it was just like, gotcha. And I think that, as much of a bummer as that is, it just showed just how skilled and devious May is, which I think they needed to drive that point home from the word go. So it really did. But it was a great scene, very well choreographed. The use of the lighting and the effects was done really well. I mean, I couldn't complain. I'm not going to complain about it. Is it a bummer to see her gone so soon? It is, but we know we're going to get to see a little bit more later in the season.
I actually, like, I didn't think this was going to happen before watching the show, but like, as soon as the fight started, I like kind of thought like she's going to die. Like, I thought she was going to die, because I was like, this is what's going to drive it. Like, because it was the opening scene, that's why I thought like, oh, this is going to happen, because that's what's going to drive it home. That's what's going to be like, oh, this is what it is. Like, this person is dangerous. I think if we didn't get her death, that we would have, like, imagine that whole episode except Indira doesn't die. I think we'd all be thinking of the character as like just childish, just like, okay, well, this person doesn't present any threat. Like, I don't think. I think they needed to do that. I think it needed to happen, and I think it was the first thing that got you going like, oh, this is going to be different. So about a minute into the fight, I was like, I thought that, like, she's gonna die. This is gonna happen, because we've seen a lot of this fight scene, and before in trailers and things like that. Like, I was like, oh, okay, so this is the assassin character. When they get foiled, and then they'll come back stronger. But yeah, watching the show, I was like, uh-oh. And I kind of had an inkling it was going to happen just because it was the first scene.
I guess I'm with you in the sense that I was expecting something drastic or something important to happen, to set the tone, to help it stand out, stand apart. That's basically what the Mandalorian did when he was going after a bounty in the very first episode. He fights all these people in the bar, and you see the door kind of circle shut on somebody, and you see that he takes his quarry in carbonite. Like, they do all these things to kind of help you get a feel for what the tone is of the movie or the show. And I feel like they did that here. I guess part of me is still confused about how a supposed Jedi master could let herself fall victim to a flying dagger. Like, that seems counterintuitive to everything we know about a Jedi's instincts, a Jedi's reflexes, to the height that the Jedi find themselves to be at in this particular time, in this particular era. Everybody back at the temple is stunned by this loss. Like, it does kind of help you see that May is a dangerous character, but I guess I personally had a little trouble suspending my disbelief. I think I enjoyed the death of the second Jedi Master in episode 2 a lot more than I did Indara's death in episode 1.
I think quickly it speaks to the time because having read some of the books, this is a time where like the Jedi aren't dealing with the Sith. They're not dealing with Force users very often. They're dealing with like they're dealing with philosophy more, and they're dealing with I mean they deal with pirates and stuff like that at the very start.
Right.
But like I think this sort of thing catches them by surprise in the same way that like Qui-Gon gets surprised by like what the fuck was that, and they're like, I think it was a Sith. Like I've heard about, like I've read about these guys, but so I think it, and this is the start of the period. The whole idea of this, the High Republic, the end of the High Republic, is that the Jedi just kind of get too cocky, which I think is a really good segue into the character Yord, because that character does not seem like a very good Jedi, like right off the bat. Like he seems like he's not really, he seems like he's a little bit materialistic. He seems like he's a little bit, ready to just fight and stuff like that. And I think he proves that point that even though Indira seems pretty, she seems wise, she seems like a very good fighter, I think the Jedi are not really ready to deal with someone who's going to use the Force against them.
I just sort of chalked it up to arrogance, which is definitely in the Jedi Order, and in this day, I mean, Kieran kind of hit it. They haven't dealt with many Force users, so like I think most Jedi that we know would have drew their lightsaber way earlier than what she actually did, and that seems to be a thing in this era, except for Yord. I think arrogance killed her, to be honest. And with Yord, the one thing I did like about his character was very early on. I think it's the first time we see him when he is talking to Osha. It's very clear, like, that there's a friendliness there, and like he kind of wants to goof around with her a little bit, but knows he can't. And then he tells her it doesn't matter what he thinks because it's the Jedi think and the code. And he reminded me a little bit of extremely uptight Obi-Wan from Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, I think Yord is a example of maybe being. I don't think he was ready for his promotion. I think it was thrust upon him for whatever reason, and he's eager to prove himself. And you hear it when he goes on the mission with Saul that he is eager to redeem himself because of what happened with Osha. And so he's very overzealous, I guess is the word I would use. And it's rooted in vanity, as you saw with the shirt scene that I still think was unnecessary. It's rooted in pride. It's rooted in zeal. It's rooted in dogma, even to a certain extent. And those are all things that Palpatine eventually ends up preying on at the fall of the Jedi. And it's interesting to see Yord as an example of the foreshadowings of what's to come and what's to become of the Jedi Order. I think he's a prime example of the reason why they meet their downfall a century later.
I mean, you could see the writing on the wall just from the way he acted on the Nemoidian ship. He was ready to, use. I didn't think he was going to use a Force ability. He knew that the Jedi have a sway, a pull about them. So he arrogantly just throws his hand up like he's going to do something, and then the Nemoidians just crack. So you could already see that with that character, that there's just an arrogance about him that in the end could come back and bite him. We'll see if there's any. I mean, obviously between episodes 1 and 2, there seemed to be a minimal amount of growth for him. Nothing too crazy that would make me feel like he's redeemed himself based on what I saw in episode 1. But it'll be interesting to see if he actually grows overall as a character throughout the first season. It does. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that this is what we're seeing out of the Jedi. The only one that really seems, I wouldn't say all there, but the closest to what we would expect out of a Jedi is Saul. But even then, there were scenes where you could see the conflict in his eyes with some of the decision making he was going through, and that he's still holding on to some of his regrets. And I think that's going to play a big part come season's end.
Yeah, there's never such a tell as to you haven't got over your past issues with saying I got over those past issues. Once he says that, you're like, oh no, he hasn't. He would just, he would not speak of it. He'd be like, what issues? But yeah, I agree. Actually, I really, really like the character of Soul, and I think when talking about the emotion that you can see in his eyes, I think that was a really good performance. Like I think the actor did a great job too. I thought I was immediately kind of attracted to the character, like pretty close on, like pretty maybe in his opening 1 or 2 scenes. I was like, this is going to be a cool character. So.
Yeah, that was kind of the standout for me from Act 1 is I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about Soul, and I got this like heavy Qui-Gon feeling from him, honestly. He was kind of like Qui-Gon, and Yord was a little bit like Obi-Wan, and I liked that dynamic and instantly hooked on the character, and even from Act 1 of Episode 1, I just thought that in terms of people that pull you in, he was fantastic. And in terms of like, we don't see too much of her in Act 1, but like, I believe it's Amandla Stenberg. Is that the actress that's playing May and Osha? Yep. She's got great range. Like if you're going to have someone play 2 parts in your show, it probably should be somebody that is a very strong actor. And no complaints here. Like I really was pulled in by a lot of these characters early. I didn't really care for the I guess it's Yord's apprentice, who I'm not really sure why she's not on the mission with them, but didn't really care for her.
Yeah, she could go on the mission to try to arrest Osha, but she couldn't go on the mission after that. Like I noticed that also. I was like, okay, so Jackie hasn't been on any missions yet, but it's apparently okay for her to go on this mission, and yet the other Padawan is just nowhere to be found. It seemed kind of arbitrary that like she would go on one but not the other. I don't know. I think there are a couple of instances in the first episode where it feels like maybe they're flexing species on us, just to remind us like, hey, this is what we can do with makeup now, and this is what we can do with CGI now. Oh, okay, never mind. That character's gone now. Never mind. That was just a one-time thing for you to enjoy and geek out about. I don't particularly care being pandered to like that, but that's what it felt like to me.
I mean, to be fair, the 2 Jedi from the temple look like they came straight out of a nerd convention. So.
Yeah.
The Master Torben looked like he, does not look like a strong Jedi character, which is fine because, I like all the characters look different and stuff like that. But I did like I took a second pause at him and was like, he's going with that beard, eh? Kind of a neck beardy type of weird thing going on there.
I want to be careful how I say this, so I'm prefacing this by saying it. I don't mean it literally. These are fictional characters we're talking about, but man, this actor just loves playing people that kill themselves in very dramatic ways, huh? First, he just walks out of the castle in Game of Thrones, or walks off the castle, and then downs some poison in this.
I don't I don't know how to follow that. um we're getting a little ahead of ourselves too, just a smidge. Um but I do know some people that are big fans of Neimoidians and haven't gotten to see them recently. Now we're seeing a trade federation cargo vessel of sorts and kind of get to see day in the life a little bit of what that vessel looks like and how certain people are viewed as expendable, and how there is apparently work out there for people to do surface ship repair that should be done by droids. I think it's an interesting commentary on the times that it's actually maybe a little bit cheaper to hire people for individual jobs than it is to pay for an expensive astromech that you could risk losing to the elements. Um, what did y'all make of the idea of having what they call mechnecs and the purposes that they served? We have seen people in zero G suits in things like Star Trek before, but I think this is one of the first times we've seen it, at least in live action. I know Ahsoka wore one in the Clone Wars, but I think this is the first time we've seen people in zero G suits in Star Wars.
She did in the Ahsoka live action series too.
Okay, yeah, it's a little bit. So it's still relatively new concept, and I guess I'm a little lost in how I feel about it. So I'm going to need y'all's input for some of this, because I haven't really felt like it was needed. I guess it was more needed for Osha's character than it was to showcase somebody in zero G suits. So it's just a storytelling choice, I guess. I'm not sure how to feel about it.
I kind of like what you said about the money aspect of it. I could totally see the Neimoidians being like, yeah, so instead of paying for these stupid expensive astromech droids, let's just have someone go risk their life out there.
I mean, you've already got like a couple of bunks that they can stay on. You only pay them per job. It's contract work. So you send them out for this 100 credit repair job, and then they just go back and live in the bunks that you're not using until you need them again. That was the impression I got. Was it's just cheaper for contract jobs on an as needed basis than to pay thousands of credits for a droid you may or may not use.
I found it was okay though, because they explained that they were like as far away from Coruscant as possible. They were like, so they were in, the Outer Rim. I don't know if they mentioned it was the Outer Rim or whatever, but like they're where you can find cheap labor in not like the planets that they go to that I think are closer by are poor Tatooine type planets. So I think you can find some pretty cheap work out there, and that's, I think, made it a little bit more okay for me. I mean, I didn't really give it a ton of thought, to be honest, but quickly I was like, oh, okay, yeah, they're in the middle of nowhere where you can find work. You can hire anybody to do something cheap. So that kind of helped me a little bit.
Well, and I feel like all it really did for the character is just give you an idea of just personality. Obviously, when the fire got started on the hull, it brought back memories. And come on, we all know at some point the marketing is going to have the new Pip droid out there for everybody, for all the kiddies to play with. So that they were trying to show that off as well. But ultimately, yeah, I feel like it was an okay scene. It wasn't great by any shape of the imagination. Obviously, it built to her getting to see Yord again because being on the ship. So, I mean, I guess there are some purposes for doing it that way, but ultimately, they could have gone a different route with this. But maybe they just wanted to get Neimoidians in there again. Who knows?
Yeah, like I said, there's certain aliens and certain sequences that felt like they were just trying to let us know, hey, we're capable of doing this, and here's how we did it. So congratulations on this 2 minutes of something that maybe somebody asked for, but I don't think I was among them. I I don't know. I did enjoy the story when we got to the story. I'm not trying to be somebody that's like nitpicking and shitting on stuff. I don't feel like I'm that type of person. But when you're so pressed for time, when you're so short on, you've got 37 minutes to tell a story, you really want to spend the first 5 of the most critical character you're going to be following doing a incessant needless repair on an alien vessel just because that's what their job description is. Like, they could be a hyperdrive repair person, they could be a droid mechanic, they could be do something that was a lot less dangerous and a lot more sensible, but they chose to put them in zero G suits because this was something that the audience needed to see. That's the storytelling problem that I have with it, I guess, is like all these different directions you could have gone, and that's the one you settled on. That I guess that's the rub for me.
I did like how the Nemoidians were super authentic in that when their mouths moved, they didn't talk properly.
They
know,
they kept
It's kind of canon, so
they kept up with that, that's for sure. But let's go into another act, unless anybody has a particular point that they want to bring up on the Nemoidian ship, or they want to bring up before that. Once Osha is arrested, she ends up on like a droid operated prisoner transport. And I would dare say this might be one of the most fun scenes of the first 2 episodes, is the prison break. Again, it's aliens we've never seen before doing things that we've never seen these aliens do before, but the cooperation of it all and the I don't know what you call it, the rollicking nature, the frolicking romp that you go on of a prison break. There's just something exciting about that you're like, oh, are they actually going to get away? Are they actually going to pull this off? And they did. And to top it off, your main character is now put into like some sort of peril because the people that were trying to break out didn't cooperate with her. And so now your main hero, your main character has to try to find a way to survive. So there's adventure and peril, 2 things that you need for a hero character, and you get both of them in that sequence.
I really think it was another example of the arrogance of the Jedi. Here's this, ex-Jedi, if you will, who is a Force user, who may have killed another Jedi, and your answer is to send her back to Coruscant on a droid-controlled ship with no Jedi there to, provide surveillance. The Jedi are not being painted in a very good light in this show. And not that I have a problem with it, by the way. I find it very intriguing and a refreshing take. Dare I say, it reminds me of some of the stuff Luke Skywalker talks about in The Last Jedi, which I'm sure that comment will get some hate. But I do think it lines up. And I thought it was fun, man. I also thought it was equally fun that when they catch the people that caused the prison break, they're all blaming friggin' OSHA for it. It was like, oh, that's very, very Star Wars Legends. And even, I don't know if any of you guys have checked out Star Wars The Living Force by John Jackson Miller, fairly new novel. Reminds me of something that happens very early on in that book with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. So,
yeah, I read that book. I have thoughts, but that's not something for tonight. I liked Zalastra, but there were certain ways that they told the story that it felt very disjointed. It was very disjointed storytelling, but that's probably a discussion for another time. But I did finish that book, so if you ever want to do a standalone talking about that, I am very down. What about this character who has a tongue for an appendage? It was able to like rip the arm off of the sentry droid, and then the other droid, the pilots that can become chairs. That was probably the one thing that my wife ended up really enjoying. She's like, "Oh, they're also chairs for when you have real people flying the ship." And I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing." And it's just, of all the things, of all the stuff that's going on in the episode, it's a droid that can also be a chair. That's the minutia that's just as entertaining as anything else in the episode, I guess.
No one else is going to chime in on this scene. I hated this entire part. This was
Really?
This was the most check my fantasy lineup and how my baseball guys are doing part of both episodes. This is the part that I guess I don't agree with Zach this time now, but this was the part where I was like, this Harry Potter bullshit coming out now here. Like, I think, they're quickly here and then they're there and then there's a prison break and then we got some weird characters and they do that and whatever and she can't use the Force but then she can and blah 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 blah, and like I just like, I don't know, I thought that was it. Was like, yeah, if I could describe it, that was the most check my phone for something else part of both episodes. I didn't like the whole prison break experience at all, except for the one point that I think really had to do with the story, which was her trying to save the guy and proving that she's not like an evil character. Because at this point, we think that she's the one, killing the Jedi. So I don't think anyone else was like, oh, it's definitely a twin. Yeah, it was like, okay, so we're getting an altruistic character who is killing Jedi. Like, what? And that was, a good question coming from the scene. But all that came before that part was a bunch of bullshit for me.
Can I just say, I came in to tonight's recording, if you will, with the intent of not bringing up runtime. And you guys are making it terribly hard for me to not go back to that. Because it's very clear it's, for me, the one issue. Zach brought it up with the ship repair. Kieran brought it up with the Harry Potter, almost like pacing, because we're going here. It's sorry, but it's an issue. I know some people don't want to admit it, but it is, for me anyway.
No, I mean, if one person can find fault with the story pacing in one element and another person can find fault with it in another element, then that's a pattern. That's a habitual concern throughout the entirety of the episode rather than in just one particular place. So it's valid. It's a valid concern. It's a valid commentary to make, I feel like, because if we want to get attached to these characters, if we want to have like a invigorating conversation about them, we need to have a reason to have that conversation. And honestly, the one of the characters that I am most excited to talk about is Kel Naka, and we only got like 10 seconds of screen time. And honestly, it felt like a modern version of Shrek almost. Like there was hardly any substance to it other than a big monster character going, "Get out of my house! What are you doing here?" And so, like, again, like, that's something I want to talk about, but there's almost nothing to talk about because we haven't gotten there yet. So we need to flesh out these characters. We need to have moments of depth. And you're right, Kieran, to think that perhaps she isn't who she believes herself to be. This was around the point where I started trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together because we hadn't really seen anything about May specifically up to this point. And so as this scene was transpiring, as this prisoner was being dragged to the pod, my first thought was, okay, what if she is being mind controlled and she is being told that she needs to do these things, and then when she wakes up, she doesn't even know she did them? What if she's schizophrenic? I brought up that idea to my wife. Like, what if she's got multiple personalities and one personality doesn't know what the other personality is doing? And then I also posed the idea, like before it was even mentioned, I also said out loud to my wife, what if she's got a twin? And it's the twin that's doing these things. Like, it would be kind of cliche having an evil twin, but it would be a possibility. And then lo and behold, that is the possibility that they go with. So again, storytelling. Maybe I have more of an issue with this now that I'm talking about it, but you could have had mind control. You could have had a dark user manipulation. You could have had schizophrenia, and the plot device you went with was evil twin. Like, is that an unfair assessment as well? Like, am I really overanalyzing this? Please, somebody like call me out if I'm getting too bullshitty here.
Based on what we've seen, which is not much in the grand scheme of things, I don't think you're overanalyzing, but I think if you take a step back and dissect everything we did get, I don't think it's as simple as, like, does May really, like, yeah, she's trying to kill Jedi, but does she really strike you as the type of Jedi who hates sand and is going to go kill a bunch of younglings? She doesn't strike me as that type. She almost seems like she's upset when she realizes that there was a kid behind the counter too. And so I do think there's more to this. And not that I know spoilers, I have no idea. I don't know anything really, but it just feels like this is the type of story that's going to say, hey, you know those things Luke Skywalker was saying in The Last Jedi about the Jedi? There's a lot of truth to it. And you know what? These guys kind of fucked up along the way. And Kieran, I know you've read The High Republic. Zach, I don't know how much you're into The High Republic. Randy, I know you're looking to get into it. I brushed up on a 90-minute video on everything that's come out so far the other day so I could have a better understanding of the time that's going on. And let me tell you, they're not above doing shady shit to cover their own asses, even ones that we know.
Well, I mean, even that conversation between Vernestra and Sol at the temple, they're talking about how if a former Jedi could, if word gets out that a former Jedi killed one of our own, our political enemies could use it against us. And I'm like, really? Really, the Jedi, the moral high ground of the Republic, have political enemies that strong and that fearsome that they're worrying about some sort of a Jedi killing scandal going on? Like, are they that afraid of the tabloids and the penny press and whatever else is out there that's how desperately they want to cover this up? Like, Kieran, it sounds like you're a resident High Republic expert. Like, is that something that they really should be fearing at this stage in the game?
I mean, taking place a little bit like 100 years before this, there is a lot of there's a lot of political type stuff that goes on, and there's a lot of like trying to prove that the Jedi are of importance, and I think like there's politics. There's also like there's like a president or whatever of who's very popular in the books, and I don't know. There's lots of politics that take place in those books, and there's lots of things like when they first build Starlight Beacon. There's a lot of them having to prove why it's there and what trying to prove to the people like, hey, this is a good thing. Like, I know we're invading your space with Jedi stuff, but we're just here to help and stuff like that. So there is, it does make sense, and I think it brings up an important point in Star Wars overall, which is whenever the Jedi become too organized and too in power and make up too many rules and those sorts of things. Like once they become like a police force, they fuck up. Like that's, they're not meant to be any sort of peacekeeping force or whatever. They need to stick to their teachings. And yeah, once they become a global police, or even if they kind of get their heads too far up their asses, then that's when they fail. So, and I think the show captures it pretty well. So I think even Vernestra, who is like a very smart character, seems to be, instead of being wise, seems to be a little bit more into the Jedi agenda so far in the little time that we've seen her. I think kind of tells you, where instead of being a 15-year-old wonderkin, she's now 100 and is kind of just going by, she's kind of worn out. You know what I mean? She's kind of just doing the regular Jedi thing and playing the politics and that sort of thing. So I did like everything to do with the Jedi Order seemed to be in the right place. I think they did a good job of capturing the period and the types of Jedi that are there at that time.
I found it interesting, and this is not a chronological discussion by any means. We're going to get to the end of the episode in just a second here, though. I did find it interesting that they would basically have uniforms for what they wear at the temple versus what they wear out in the field. Saul had some very bright, ornate colors in the classroom when he was teaching the younglings. And then when he was getting ready to go out into the field, they were more muted in shades of brown rather than shades of white. So apparently, if you're going out of the temple, there's a little bit of a wardrobe change involved. And I think that bears keeping up with as the series progresses. Is there like a uniform option based on whether you're stationed at the temple or out in the field?
I know all of the Jedi in the High Republic, like comic books and books, like in all the, like they all wear their own sort of outfit. They're actually not much of a uniform. They're not the same.
No, I think the whites were really meant to kind of show that when they're in the temple, it's kind of like more of a relaxing fit, nothing too crazy, not meant to be so much for fighting as it really is, just probably used for training purposes only. And because it did seem like the more traditional Jedi robes were put on after the fact they were getting ready to leave.
Right. Well, towards the end of the episode, you see Saul. I forget what planet it was that they crash landed on. That Osha crash landed on. There's some new names that I didn't keep up with on my first run through very well, but it's a rather desolate and snowy planet. They come across the wreckage, and it's almost like he has some sort of a connection that while the other two believe that she didn't make it, he somehow has this realization, oh, she did survive this crash. And this is the direction she went, as if his bond with her has not fully been severed, even after all these years. And he's able to catch up to her around the same time that she's realizing that her long lost twin that she had been grieving over for the last 16 years is actually alive. I think this final act actually really drives the story a lot more than the first 2/3 of the episode does, because you see that he still has an attachment, even though attachments aren't really a good thing for Jedi to have. And you see that somebody who has been grieving over the loss of a family member is now conflicted over how to feel about their siblings still being alive. The tail end of this episode, I feel like, probably carries it more than pretty much anything else we get in this episode.
Yeah, it was definitely very emotionally driven to some extent. You could like you said, he still had his connection, but like when you saw them on screen together, you could actually feel the connection too, because both of them still seem to have it. And I think that I've said many times in kind of what to expect. I really feel like Soul's going to end up sacrificing himself or getting in the way or some way saving, Osha so that she can continue on trying to stop her sister. I think that's kind of the end game or end result of maybe the season. Other than that, I mean, I thought that so far with the planets, I've loved what I've seeing out of the planets. The fact that we're getting to see different locales and different different color palettes and things like that. It's not, hey, let's spend the first 3 or 4 episodes on Tatooine where all you see is sand. Yep. Gotta love that sand. But ultimately, like, and I will say, I thought one of the things I kind of thought was neat is one of the little, I would say it's a little bit of an Easter egg. Yord pulling out his lightsaber to use it as a light source, like you saw in like Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order, stuff like that. I thought that was kind of a nice, neat little callback to that, because you'd never really seen the Jedi use their lightsaber as a light source before. So that was a nice little Easter egg that they threw in there, I feel. But yeah, the Soul's reaction time is pretty impressive considering how quickly she fell off the cliff. I will say that. I do feel like that connection they share really did play a big role with that.
I just I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to add in terms of the last act of episode 1, but I do got to ask, any theories on the figure at the end who's talking to May and who that might be? Because I feel like that's the real end game of the series, not necessarily May or Osha. And I feel like Soul is hinting at it too throughout the first 2 episodes. It's not so much, well, May did this. It's who trained you? Who trained you? Who trained you? Like there's a fear there almost.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, isn't it obvious who it's going to be? The evil twin of Soul.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Oh man!
What? Not obvious.
You say it jokingly, but we've already got one evil twin. I wouldn't put it past him to give us another.
Like we were talking about how the episodes didn't like really end. They did put that in there, which was the like cap of that episode that made you go like, oh well, I want to see who that guy is. So that was the one part they did do good, but I do still agree that, we didn't really like, other than that, which was completely separate, we didn't get a good finish to the episode, which made it feel more like that was the only thing that made it feel like it was a kind of a cap of its own episode, was that we got that teaser. Almost was kind of like an after credits thing. In fact, that was the reason why I skipped right away, because I was like, well, that's the kind of thing they would do in the after credits, so they're not going to have an after credits or anything. So, but I did like that, and I do think the prediction I had was that it will be a character, because it was a shadowy figure. I feel like it'll be a character that we see not as an evil character in the show and then turn out to be the evil. Like maybe in episode 4 or 5, we'll meet another Jedi character from the past or something like that, and then it'll turn out to be the shadow figure. Much in the same way that, Palpatine is like a good background character, and then of course he ends up being the Emperor that we know and love so well.
Yeah, I think the comment that the analogy that the hooded figure makes is only because they know the Jedi Order intimately. So, like to say that they are living a dream and that an acolyte, destroys the dream, that's the only type of analogy somebody can make in that way and in that fashion is if they have seen those Jedi experiencing that dream firsthand. So I do think
they know if the Jedi wear space underwear. The long lost question. We need to know.
I mean, we already saw a shirtless Jedi in the first episode, so who's to say we're not going to see one in magic underwear by episode 5 or 6?
You're not gonna let that go, are you?
I'm telling you, dude, there's just things about the episode that were like selections that was like, okay, that was a choice. Why was that a choice? Why is that in there? To
I think
what relevance or what important is there for me to see some actors six pack and man titties for an obvious 20 seconds? That
was a good looking man. It was a good looking man. I think the point of that scene was that he was like pressing his suit. He was doing something with his suit. I don't think it was supposed to be for him to show off his body and be like, look at this. And you do some titty bouncing. I think it was supposed to be he was like, he was ironing his suit and whatever, like to make it look cool. Because he had some sort of thingamajigger that he was using on his suit. I think the point of him being the vanity part was that he was pressing his suit, not that he was like going like, look at this. But anyways, I don't think we need to spend another 15 minutes on that.
No, we don't.
We don't need exactly with the show.
We don't.
It was the show's arrogance, and we can leave it at that.
Oh, I'm leaving it. All right, I'm leaving it far behind. Episode 2, we get a lot more of the investigative side of things, which is something that the Jedi Order did quite a lot of. If you read something like Master and Apprentice, it's a lot of finding out why something happened or how something happened. It's a lot of asking questions, exploring local areas. It's being a Sherlock Holmes in robes almost. And it felt very much like the Jedi were seeking answers, especially after the second attempt was made. And you're kind of clearing Osha of her charges. But now that she's been cleared, who actually done it? It's literally a who done it type of scenario. And to see them go from assuming the worst to now becoming proper investigators was an interesting turn, to go from just assuming this is who it is to now having to actually investigate and figure out what's at the root of your situation, of your problem, of this Jedi killing spree that's going on. And I think it just led to a lot more character depth than what we got for season or episode 1. Like episode 1, you learn their names. Episode 2, you learn a lot more about who they are, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just like the whole aesthetic of episode 2 better than episode 1. Visually, it's more appealing. The Jedi team up group there. I really enjoy what they do in episode 2. It's so weird because obviously we're telling the story from Osha and May's perspective, but also getting a lot of soul in there. It's hard, right? Because I think most people think Jedi equals good, and I feel like there's a lot being laid out that go, maybe not so much. And I think episode 2 kind of lends to that a little bit, and we're getting more hints at it. And I personally enjoyed episode 2 more than episode 1, despite the shorter runtime. But there's something about seeing a group of Jedi on a mission, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you take away, the confrontation with Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith and everything that goes down in Geonosis in Attack of the Clones, we've never seen a group of Jedi together out on a mission. So seeing that dynamic is, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it almost makes you feel like you have a party on, one of the, those games everyone likes.
Knights of the Old Republic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, those games everyone likes. That's
Almost
what I call it.
Everyone.
everybody.
That's what I call
Everyone.
it. Wait, who doesn't like them?
Everyone.
Oh,
Uh,
boo on you.
Anyways, it seems like that, and it's cool. I did really like the scene once again. Kind of proves once again. What's the guy's name again? The gloating Jedi there.
Yord.
Yord. It once again proves Yord's not ready for his training, like Zach said, because they're like, okay, let's find out when they have OSHA planted in there and try to get information. And right away he's like, he confessed, let's go get him. And they're like, wait. Even the Padawan is like, wait, like just let's find out. So, let's find out some more. And they did find out about the presence of another figure who was teaching them. And if Yord would have just went in there like Batman and taken him down and beaten the shit out of him, they would not have gotten that information. Which is cool because it proves that as much as the Jedi are not, they might be losing their way, there are some apprentices who are still making wise decisions, still taking their time and stuff like that. I feel like the Jedi at this point are half and half between, being as misguided as like Mace Windu and being as wise as Qui-Gon. So.
Well, and didn't Yord have a different plan that was to basically just flush him out and arrest him and interrogate him, and then there was the other plan to actually send OSHA in pretending to be May, and that plan ended up getting used instead. And it's like, oh man, we're taking the advice of a Padawan instead of that of a fully fledged knight. Like, this guy's still got a good bit left to learn.
I mean, Jackie was definitely far more prepared for this assignment than Yord, without a shadow of a doubt. She kept her level head, and her plan was pretty good. It was just obviously OSHA wasn't as prepared for it as she could have been. But obviously to move the story along, they get the guy. By the way, I'm hoping you guys caught the fact he was like, I hope you guys aren't going to do that mind wipe thing on me. And I'm like, well, there's a nice little KOTOR callback.
Oh, I caught it. Narsha died.
And once again, like, shows the like militaristic like type Jedi that are probably out there who are like, yeah, you forget everything. Like, I can do that. I have the powers, or I have the moral high ground to do that. Just be like, yeah, you know what, you'll forget it anyways. So I think the Jedi are divided, which is going to make it easier for the evil guys to, tear them apart. They're not they're overgrown.
Well, we're already seeing the start of that, just with Sol and the Jedi Council itself, because he's trying to do the right thing and make sure that the trail doesn't grow cold, and he's got to getting all these conflicting orders from the Jedi Council. The first thing, no, you need to come back, and then no, you need to stay out there. You can tell already that there's just this power struggle, because they brought it up about the whole political thing in the first episode. So it's definitely happening. And I think we're just going to see it start to get the roots are going to start getting deeper, and you're going to see this more and more as the series goes on, because at some point someone's got to do something. You can't just sit there and keep on blindly following orders. And I think that's what ultimately is going to end up happening, is Sol's going to make a decision saying this is something we have to do, and forget what the Jedi Order is saying, because we know we need to do what's right. Yeah. At least that's what it feels like is happening.
They have to. I mean, it makes it, well, like, the thing is, we know where they're going with this too, right? Like, the Jedi Order has to, they have to devolve into the Jedi Order that we see in Episode 1, where they're, you know, like I said, like I don't mean to rip on Mace Windu, but he's the worst Jedi of all time. He's just like he's totally like he says so many things in Episode 1 where he's like, yeah, like, you know, but we're the Jedi, like who gives a shit? Like we would have seen it. Like what if there's a bad guy? He's like, nah, we would have known. We're all powerful, and like, you know what I mean? Like he's such a blinded by how great the Jedi are, you know, Jedi. And that's where we have to go, because in 100 years, that's the council that's in place. And the wisest Jedi, I think, I'm a big Qui-Gon fan, but I think most people would agree the wisest Jedi are Yoda, who's already on the council for forever, and Qui-Gon, who the council doesn't like. So we have to get to that point. And I think this is doing a good job of showing how they're going to get to that point.
I think Qui-Gon personally is more wise than Yoda, and that's why we see Yoda become his apprentice basically after the Jedi Order falls. And speaking of Yoda, for those that have read the High Republic, I'm going to spoil something for those who haven't. But just watching that brush up video I did the other day, you find out that like some of the massive events in the High Republic that the Jedi Order should know about, they don't know about because Yoda and some of the other members on the council decided to cover shit up. Like very, very serious shit, not just from the galaxy, but most of the Jedi Order too. So like this order's already corrupt. The seed's already planted, and it's only getting worse. And it'll continue that way till we get to the prequels.
I guess I guess I don't even know where that was. That in the middle, or was that at the start of the episode where that sort of happened? Where do we get to next? I'm starting to get tired, so I'm starting to get lost on what happens at the end of the episode now already.
I'm a little foggy headed myself. I know that after Osha goes into the store and confronts him,
That's the halfway point.
That's about midway through. Yeah, we did kind of touch on May infiltrating the temple because of the dramatic death, and I alluded that I appreciated this death more than the one that takes place in the first episode, mostly because it reminded me very much of V for Vendetta. I got some big time V for Vendetta vibes with May coming in and offering poison as a solution to somebody who feels guilty about something they did in their past. There was a scene in V for Vendetta where he comes in to this lady's house, and she basically whispers like, "You're here to kill me, aren't you?" And he says yes, and she kind of cries into her pillow and says, "Thank God." Like that was that sense of relief, that sense of absolution that came over the master's face was something that reminded me of that scene from V for Vendetta. So that may have been the reason why I enjoyed it a little bit more, because I got some impressions from one of my favorite movies, but I still think that it's really different that whoever is training May is telling her that she needs to be able to kill these Jedi masters without a lightsaber. That you have to use other methods, other weapons in order to really prove yourself. So she's not actually out to kill just one Jedi. She's after 4 really powerful Jedi. I believe at least one of them is or was on the council. So like these are very renowned Jedi that this person is going after. And she's not even being classified as a full-fledged Sith. So I have to give a lot of credit to whoever her master is, telling her, "Oh yeah, if you can't kill these people without a lightsaber, then you're not a true believer." Like that takes a lot of training, and that takes a lot of guts.
I didn't like that the character that we see working at the shop there was the one to kind of give her the idea that, though. Felt like, you know, he was one who's like, oh, like everyone has a weakness and stuff like that, and then he was like, you know, he gave her the potion and everything. I didn't get any inkling that she was going to do anything other than show up again and try to kick through a force field. So, I mean, I guess it's a character who's learning and evolving, and, you know, being that the twins are probably going to be our main characters for most of it. That's okay because they need some growth, but I wasn't a big fan of that character, to be honest. That the shopkeeper, you know, sort of sidekick. I thought that character was a little wavy on like whether they were smart or not, or whether like are they like, is that guy smarter than her? Should he be the one? He knows about the boss, or he knows. So like, what? I thought this was kind of a, you know, apprentice, you know, rule of two type of thing. So I don't know. I felt like that character's direction and like input on May's ability to kill the Jedi, I found that kind of off-putting, or I found that kind of like one of those like things like Zach was saying, like, you know, maybe a misstep that I didn't really care for. It didn't bother me that big, but didn't care for the character or even more his placement in the story.
I hope he doesn't end up being the guy behind the mask.
Oh God. that would be like, okay, I'm out. I'm tapping. I quit.
Our drinking problem.
No, but I think like with Torben's death, the real thing here is the fact that he says, "We thought we were doing the right thing. I'm so sorry." And it's like, okay, what did those 4 Jedi do on May and Osha's homeworld that obviously May feels the need for revenge? And I think that's going to be the real mystery that's going to unfold as we get through the season. And I don't think it's going to be, you know, who the identity of the Sith is, because we know he's a Sith. There's no question about it. But I will say it wouldn't shock me, because I think, if memory serves me correctly, Sean, you had said David Harewood had signed on to do a voice role, and I'm pretty sure that was him doing the Sith with just having the mask on.
Yeah, I know this isn't in that episode, but like I do think in some way that this ends up being Plagueis or Tenebris, the line that leads to Palpatine. We'll see. You know, I guess we'll see. I don't really have anything else to add in there. And for those of you that don't know, Plagueis would be Palpatine's master, and Plagueis' master was Tenebris.
I did not know who Plagueis' master was, so I'm learning things tonight. That's fantastic. Didn't think I'd be coming in here learning stuff, especially at this hour.
Well, I mean, it could end up being Revan, who's barely holding on, and Zach just throws something at his TV, but
I swear to God.
I mean, the mask in the trailer doesn't look all that far off.
I swear to God.
I'm not going to lie. I thought the same thing, too. When I saw that mask, I'm like, that's very Revan-like.
I swear. I cannot with you people sometimes.
I wish there was a camera. If it did end up being true, it'd be so awesome to have a camera on Zach. You want to see something go viral? That'll go viral.
I love how we don't have Johnny to pick on, so you're like, you know what? Let's just pick on Zach and his hate for these games.
Well, I mean, if it's Darth M count, then, you know, who knows?
I don't. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out one way or another, and I think that's what's exciting about these next several weeks is we are gonna have an overlap, I would say, of about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 weeks, I would say, of having Acolyte one day and having Game of Thrones another day. Like we are going to be in some peak summer entertainment for the next month and a half based on what we've seen from these first 2 episodes. The end of this episode, they try to lay the trap for you. You see some great hand-to-hand combat between Saul and May in the courtyard, and you actually see May and Osha make eye contact as May is getting away, and you kind of get this feeling that something is there, and maybe there needs to be a face-to-face conversation between the two of them in order to kind of sort out what's been going on over the past 16 years. How are you still alive? Because both of them believe that the other was dead. So there's obviously some miscommunication that took place there, and maybe those 4 Jedi were responsible for that. They separated them, told the other one that the other had died in a fire, because if attachments are forbidden and you've got multiple Jedi temples, let's just throw out a hypothetical and say maybe they lied to the siblings, telling both of them that the other one was dead so that they could let go of their attachments and focus on Jedi training. And both of them ended up leaving the order out of resentment or grief or whatever it may be. And May went completely the opposite direction and went to the dark side because of it. Osha just stepped away from the order. I could see that as being a thing, because there it gets hinted on it. Sean, do you remember this in The Living Force? Zalastra, the whole reason she became a pirate was because 2 of her best friends were picked up and taken away from her to become Jedi, but she was left behind.
Yeah, for me, and maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusion here, there's definitely something very nefarious going on with the Jedi. I don't think it's going to be a matter of point of view. I think if you're watching the show and the way this unfolds, is it's going to be, oh wow, yeah, these guys are maybe not the good guys we thought they were, or some people think that they are. Did anyone else also pick up that? So there's 4 Jedi Masters that she's trying to kill. Kelnaka, Indara, who's already bit the dust, Torben, who's bit the dust, and Sol. Anyone, just happened to catch that all 4 are now located on different planets / temples, that they're not all in the same place, and they would have been in the past?
So they were all stationed together 16 years ago, and now they're all stationed separately 16 years later.
Mm-hmm.
As if to keep them apart so that nobody can track them down or nobody can trace them, or what are you getting at?
Well, I mean, like I said, Yoda and company cover up something in the High Republic. I think maybe those 4 don't know it, but that the Jedi are very much keeping them apart. We see is Venestra? Is Venestra the High Republic Jedi? Is that her name?
Vernestra.
Vernestra? Okay, so like it's not even a discussion. It's solely, you're coming back here, end of story.
Mm-hmm.
Don't search. Don't go to where Kelnaka is. Torben's now dead. You don't want the 2 remaining together. Like, and Sol's even like, we know where she's going. Like, hello. And it's, no, forget that, come back here. To me, there's absolutely been a cover up. But I'm not sure the 4 people that are paying the price for it are the ones necessarily responsible for it.
Interesting. Well, why don't we?
Wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna find out in the next few weeks, I suppose. But based on what we've gotten from 1 and 2, let's go ahead and try to land this speeder, whatever we're gonna call it, and give our final thoughts and our ratings on these first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. And of course, Sean's got a new rating system that he's going to throw in here. How many Neimoidians out of 10? If we're rating these episodes on Neimoidians, I'm giving it a 0 every damn time. What the hell is going on here? Oh my god. Jeez.
Nice
That's
for Johnny to make an appearance on the show.
Isn't it?
with Jar Jar, apparently. Darth Binks over there on the horizon with
Best of friends.
Shadowy figure.
there we go.
Before I give my rating, I'll say this: the show did a lot of positive. It's not perfect, but I think there's enough new stuff in this era that if they wanted to keep telling stories in this era past this season, that that they could. And I think it's an area, whether it be this area, 2,000 years further in the past or whatever, it's a time period that has needed to be explored. You've needed to get away from the Skywalker saga, but even this being, 100 years before Phantom Menace, roughly, it still plays an importance into where the story is going to lead, similar to House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. But I'm excited for more. I really am, and honestly, critically, anyways, it's being received very, very well. You still have the dicks who get out there and are misogynistic and do all that garbage and review bombing it, and people point to an audience score instead of a critic score. But honestly, the critics have been pretty positive about this so far. So I think there's a lot to be excited for, but I also think it's healthy to keep expectations in check.
Yeah, that's fair. That's pretty fair. I'm gonna kick off just because I'm fading and I don't want my thoughts to fade even further. Episode 1 is probably a solid 7 for me. It lays a foundation. It gives you some intrigue. It gives you some new characters. It explores that new era, like you talked about, Sean. But it does have some pacing and some storytelling issues that are left to be desired. So it's probably somewhere in between a 6 and a 7 for me. I'm feeling generous tonight, so I'll give it a 7. But if I watch it again, I may bump it down to a 6. Who knows? And you know what? Screw it. I'll give it a 6. And then the next episode will be a 7. Episode 2 will be a 7. Episode 1 will be a 6 for me. 7 is a little bit better, but I think that there's still some things that they could work on, some things that they could get better at. So I'll give it a 7 out of 10 just because I think there was improvement, but I think there's still room to grow. So a 6 and a 7 for me.
George gives it an 8 out of 10 for both episodes. Glad you liked it, man.
Good stuff. Randy, final thoughts and scores of these first 2 episodes.
So for giving, for the first 2 episodes, I mean, it was a good 1-2 punch. It did enough to pique my interest and get me ready for next week. Again, I mean, yeah, definitely wasn't perfect, but really, what is, when you really think about things overall, especially when it comes to Star Wars programming. I know, like with Ahsoka, I went completely insane with my ratings. I probably shouldn't have, but I was just overly excited then. So I tried to keep kind of an even keel here on this one. For episode 1, I'm gonna go 7.5, just because I did like the fact that it felt fast, even though it really wasn't. I liked a lot of the little story ticks they hit on. I liked the room for growth. Obviously, with the characters, I'm not being as familiar with them. It really is going to take time to develop that bond, that a watcher would have watching a series with the characters you just meeting. I hope we get to see some more development out of Jackie and Yord, just because even though they're side characters and they've obviously established their main stars, that doesn't mean we can't get to see some really good character growth out of them to kind of help us transition, because we know by next season, this main three is probably going to be the big three here. As far as episode 2 goes, I'll give that a solid 7. Again, even though it felt fast, there were times when it did feel a little slow, not to the detriment of the episode completely, but slow enough that I kind of was like, okay, all right, I could check my phone for like a second, because that's how I usually, if I'm watching something, if I don't pick up my phone, you did your job. It's a success. I feel like with this episode, even though it wasn't as action heavy as the first one, we really got to see some really good interactions between characters. We got to see some really good, like we got that the fact that Amandla Stenberg gets to play both May and Osha, and it has to have that moment where they lock eyes for the first time in 16 years. I mean, the amount of emotion and probably thoughts that went back and forth between those, it's just between herself, really, when you think about it, having to get in that frame of mind of playing both characters, that was really well done. You could just tell just how much heartache was between both of them, because that realization that you're alive. That was definitely probably like the big emotional moment for me in episode 2. Like the action piece was decent too. I really enjoyed that. Just shows how good of a combat specialist Soul seems to be in general. But yeah, it's like I said, episode 1, 7.5, episode 2, 7, and I'm pretty excited. I'm ready to watch the Wookiee go at it, because that's gonna be exciting next week, as long as he gets some really good action pieces with him.
Get out of my swamp.
Say it in Wookiee now, and you're good.
Maybe next time. Sean, final thoughts, and then take us home, man. Or Kieran, we didn't get to you yet, did we?
No.
Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. But Sean, you can bring us home for sure.
Okay, I would give the first episode a 6.5. I'm kind of between a 6 and a 7. It's odd because like there are a lot of like pacing I didn't like, and of course I didn't like almost a quarter of the episode, which was the like escape thing. I did really like the costumes. I love the choice of Jedi having a very gentle fighting style of old Japanese martial arts movies. I thought that fits Jedi hand-to-hand combat really well, and it was cool, looked great. That whole fight scene was great. We got a surprise out of it. And even though, there was some things I didn't like, I was asking questions the whole time. It's hard for me to it's hard for me to give it a 7 with some of the knocks that I had on it. But so we'll land at 6.5. And I will give the second episode 7.5. Had way less problems with it. One of the problems I didn't talk about, though, was the whole scene with looking over the encounter between May and Soul and the fight that took place there and stuff like that. That set piece really looked like it was from a play. Like it was very closed in. It didn't look like it was a street that was going anywhere. It felt like it was a very small set. Not really I didn't like that. I didn't particularly think the Jedi Temple looked like anything that made sense. Looked like, I don't know. Or like the Jedi Temple having the same eyeball thing come out that Jabba has on his thing. Like a lot of those choices I thought in set design were not good. So something we didn't really talk about. But I like the acting. I like the story. The second episode was more riveting. And so I gave it a 7.5. So 6.5, 7.5. I think we're all in unison in that the series went up as it went on. So that's cool. And that's a good trend.
Yeah, and I think we're keeping our expectations tempered, hoping that it's going to continue to improve. So by having these numbers where they are, we're saying it's a decent start. Let's hope it gets better.
Yeah, I mean, 7.5 is good. I mean, if the whole series is 7.5, then it's a good show. I mean, if it was something I didn't enjoy, it'd get below 5, right? So,
Yep, that's fair. Okay, Sean, I'm sorry for skipping ahead like that, but it's all you, my dude.
Episode 1, I gave a 6.5, and episode 2, I gave a 7. So, and that's an okay start. It's not great, but I think it's good, maybe a little better than good. I'm pretty satisfied. I do think the Jedi Temple thing Kieran mentioned is more of like an enclave thing on another planet rather than the whole Jedi Temple. I actually like that the actual Jedi Temple on Coruscant inside has a little bit of a different look to it, and it looks a little like it doesn't look like Obi-Wan and Anakin were just walking in there in the Clone Wars, right? So I appreciated that it feels like it's 100 years difference. But yeah, if the whole series ends up being a 7 out of 10, I still consider that a positive. But anyways, thanks for staying up late with us here. It's appreciated. I'm definitely looking forward to starting episodes around 9:45, 10, and being off by 11 moving forward. So that'll be nice getting there. Tonight was 2 episodes, obviously. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out all the content we have coming on the channel. We have 2 Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon episodes dropping weekly soon. One on Fandom Empire, the other on Legacy of Westeros. You'll be able to catch Zach and I most Sunday nights. And then on Monday nights, you'll be able to catch a combination of Randy, Kieran, myself, and or Ryan, diving into House of the Dragon coming up. So if you're looking forward to that show, we have that coming up in the near future. Zach has his football stuff that you can check out at Zach the Voice. I don't think Kieran's doing anything on the side right now. And then Randy's co-hosting Legacy of Star Wars still with me here. So definitely appreciate that. Honestly, I think all in all, there's some nitpicks, but it was a good night. And, I think that's good. None of us were throwing things at the TV yet. If Revan happens, then, God be with Zach. We're going to have to check on his well-being. But
I'm going to have to replace my wife's television set if that happens.
But yeah, no, it was fun. Thanks for doing this, guys. Big thanks to our sponsors again. Storytime Spectacular, Backtrack Cinema, Colleague Nation, Matt, and Chris C_78 on Instagram. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And again, thanks to our patrons as well. Really appreciate you keeping the channel afloat. But until next time, I was going to say that may the Force be with you, but it really feels like may the Force serve you might be better with the way this show's going. So enjoy, have a great week, and we will see you next week.